All right. Good afternoon, folks. So cool. Happy to be here. And today, we're going to discuss bias and inclusivity at workplace. I guess this is something that we all deal with, on a daily basis, right? In society, in personal life, in professional life. I think what's important is to identify this, be able to realize that there is a systemic bias or a subconscious bias, or sometimes even explicit bias in people, in systems, processes, and stuff like that. And how do you negate that in a workplace and make sure that we build a very inclusive culture and a safe workspace for everybody in work life? So I'm going to talk to Anuranjita and Mamta and hear their thoughts on what they think and how do we deal or how they do stuff in their respective walks of life to negate all types of bias. So first, Anu, if you can give me an overview of what are some of the biases over and above, the known subconscious biases that are there, or gender biases and stuff like that, and what should we do to pay attention to it? How do we identify it? How do we negate some of these biases systematically in our workplaces? We can start with that and then we take it forward from there.
Thank you, Suman, and a pleasure to be here. Those are four questions rolled into one. So I don't know how long you want me to go on before I'm thrown out of this panel, but I shall attempt to be as succinct as I can. So I think you just said unconscious bias. So it is about I don't even know I'm biased. You know,
Mhm.
as people, we don't want to be biased because bias as a word is associated with something which is mean, which is bad, and who likes to be mean and bad. So very often, even if I'm carrying something, a perception about a certain situation, certain people, ways of looking at life, I tend to push it down in a dark space in my mind, which operates, but I don't see it. So it's a bit of a psycho game which we play with ourselves. So there are two of us inside, and I do, by no means want to go into the psychology of it, but as we all know that our reptilian brain has only two reactions: fight or flight. So whenever we see something which is different, which is not in our normal scheme of things, which can create a positive bias, we try to run away or we try and negate it, usually whether it's work or in our general life. And I think in interactions with each other there are five factors which tend to kind of play out. And one of them is this person similar to me? And if so, then I kind of already have boxed them into who they are and what they potentially would be, their positives, negatives, more likely positive because they're like me, and hopefully I'm a nice person. So there's a positive bias associated with similarity. Sometimes it's about expedience, which is about it feels right, so it must be true. And that feeling comes from some innate nurturing or socialization. So it feels right. It's supposed to be like this. Third is experience. I have grown up looking at life in a certain way, and often we hear, it's perceptions. In the corporate world, the word perception is used very liberally. And, your perception is not right, or your perception is very good. And it bothers me a lot because perceptions are not realities. But how people look at you is governed by the perception they have of you. If I'm brown, I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm disabled, I'm LGBT, I'm younger, older, people's perception of what old people do drives what I perceive with energy with old people. If I see a woman who is pregnant, I associate tenderness at some level, but also a conflict between work and life at some level. So that's the perception which has been built over a time, which drives my decisions and my views about those people. The fourth one being distance. How visible somebody is to me day to day. I see them, so I understand them better, hence they must be good. So visibility, distance, and of course safety. So something which is different, I completely haven't dealt with it in my life, feels sometimes threatening to me. And sometimes I may get very curious about it, but more often I would run away from it. So we call it, it's a very well-known seeds model. And those of you listening to it, google it, read about it, it's well researched. but it tends to drive most of our actions in our personal life and also in our professional life. The second part of your question was, how do you deal with it? I wish there was an easy answer. I think over decades we've been trying to deal with it. Anything which is unconscious, probably the only way to deal with it is making it conscious, acknowledging it exists. And the more I bring it to my front brain, which is my analytical brain, and not in my regressive brain, the more stronger I get to deal with it and more objectively I deal with it. So I think, in my view, in my experience, the only way to deal with unconscious bias is make it conscious. And that's not always an easy process to do. It takes a lot of reflection, introspection, and thinking. Most importantly, acceptance that actually I am operating in a paradigm which may be right, which may not be right.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Well, I could relate to most of that in on a day-to-day basis, right? When it comes to hiring, even dealing with people at workplace. So that comes to my second question, Mamta. How have you been dealing with this at a workplace? How have you been, you know, removing some of these biases in your organization and help build a more inclusive workplace?
Yeah, no, look, thank you for asking that. And it's a nice segue from where Anu left it, right? So a lot of it is going to be dovetailing on what she highlighted. And I mean, the very first thing, and I'm going to pick you from the fact about making it conscious, right? So that is that therein lies that Fiserv, being one of the globally renowned organizations, for us, right, and for most organizations, it's the culture and the DNA, right, really dictates and is really the guiding compass, if you will, right? So our values, or the fact that we fundamentally believe that diversity and inclusion is part of that core fabric, right? It's part of that culture, and it's right all the way from the top, right? And that pretty much then dictates a set of very deliberate actions in everything that we do, right? So to that extent, while I mean it's great to have all the good thoughts, but it's then translating it to actions and across all levels, right? So Fiserv has actually put together a forward together diversity and inclusion plan, which actually is nothing but symbolic of the fact that we would like to elevate our diversity levels across all our countries and across our levels of the organization, right? So start with that backdrop, and the fact that we would like for all our associates to bring their whole selves to work, right? There's a lot more consciousness around this conversation, and it stems between the elevated conversations, raising the awareness, whether it's training, whether it's hiring, and I'll just double click a little bit on it, right? Again, due to the paucity of time, may not be able to go into depth on each one of it. But let's just take some examples, right? So in no particular order, it's the way I look at it, it is both wide and deep, right? And so what I mean by that is it is also the diversity of thought. It's the mindset shift. If you talk about the depth of it, like and about hiring some of it, let's take women, right? Which tends to be the first thing that comes to mind, whether we like it or not, when the minute you touch a diversity and inclusion topic, right?
Right.
When it comes to women in particular, right, for us to bring back women in tech, or even for the women that are there in the workspace and in the ecosystem, to be able to have an environment in which they're able to thrive and have that drive to really grow is really pertinent. In partnership, in fact, with like the women in tech piece that, Anu mentioned, right, we actually have a return to work program, right, which is forward for her. So we actually have some of those very intentional programs where we bring women back after a career break. Or even for those that are there, if you talk about panels, right, is your panel diverse? You can talk about this all day long, but is the panel diverse to begin with? What's the thought process? And also this is a whole gamut of across levels, like I mentioned. If I look about, and then the ecosystem, is the ecosystem set up right? Look, I'll tell you, I joined, and few of you, that do know me, but I mean, I joined Fiserv when I was expecting. I feel like, my baby and Fiserv all grew up at the same time, and it's been pretty seamless, right? So and we've seen so many women over here, that have joined us during different phases of their life, right? They call it the 3 M's typically, why women tend to drop from work or otherwise. But just embracing the whole marriage, motherhood, all of that, which are phases of life as part of powerful course for your work, just makes it that much more seamless, just as how these days we're all working from home, right? Who knew better? And if I go into, let's say, another piece now, which is the LGBTQ, right? Again, not to typecast, right, to Anu's point again, but we do have that, right? And it's a little more consciousness in terms of increasing, elevating that awareness about reaching out. For example, our engagement with the Pride Circle, where it's not just representing, but it is the fact that it is sponsorship from all the way from the top, about being again intentional about bringing them into our organization. About it's not as much as bringing them, but just for it to be a safe place. Like it's totally, like, I'll tell you, the first time when we spoke about this, we actually have had couples that have been together and married for 10 years, and they're part of the Fiserv organization, and today they have started a very thriving ERG for us, especially in India. So these are symbolic of the way forward. And then, I mean, it's not really limiting to this, right? It's multi-generational. So if you talk about multi-generational, you've got a lot of the youth, especially in India. More than 70% of the workforce tends to be, millennial and now zillennial and whatever else, right? Now I'm dating myself, but there is that as well, right? And then just our amplification on messaging. And goes back to the point I was mentioning about being deliberate at every step of the way, from the leaders to the frontline managers, to holding your peers accountable, and about awareness, right? So this subconscious bias and these trainings are not a one-off thing, right? But ensuring that they're part of that ecosystem. Managers go through it. Various folks that are in an influential role are. I'll tell you, I personally went through a pretty deep intervention, so to speak, right? I felt like I was talking to a psychologist by the end of it. But we have all been through, some of those very deep assessments of where we stand, what are those subconscious biases, should we have any, and each one has something. But, what is it and how could you make it better? And so that you can actually, amplify your strengths across the organization. So it's not just a good plan, which looks like a good slogan, on social media, but it is something that we live by throughout. And then, just 2 more points really is also, we're not very, or I would say we're not bashful at all on things that when it comes to, just equity and social injustice, if you will, right? So it doesn't matter if it was George Floyd incident in the US, or if it was, the Stop Asian Hate Crime in this part of the world, or even New York for that matter, or anything in India. The point is, everybody in the organization has a voice. And it's not, again, just a statement that we make that goes out to say this is our point of view. I kid you not, like our CEO to our CHRO to several others actually have and want to have one-on-one, group conversations with folks to hear their stories, to hear how they feel about it, how and what more can we do about it. So there's genuine care and passion, which is, again, fundamental to that culture piece that I mentioned, right? And then last but not the least is employee resource groups, which are just a wonderful way of, not everything can be done by a handful of people.
Absolutely.
Right? So ERGs and their wide and vast network. So, we've got several ERGs and 84 chapters across countries, over 6,500 people connected on each one of these, that are constantly raising their allyship on these topics, and that are really our strength across the organization, if you will. So these are, again, just testimony to some, but happy to double click on more on specific to hiring. Awesome. As we move along the conversation.
No, thanks for that. And I completely agree with both of you. I think being conscious about it and accepting that there is bias is the first step towards, moving forward. I think, and I think most organizations don't want to address it or take it, directly. I think that's the first step that most organizations should do. And I completely agree with you all. Just double clicking on on one of the aspects that you spoke about. How do you bring your leadership into this? How does this become a leadership goal? And in today's day and age, with so many things going on and various aspects that the leadership is focused on, how do you make this a top priority for the leadership teams in an organization?
Yeah, okay. So, and I can speak to it, but I'm sure that Anu, with again all her
Yeah, I'd love
experience,
to
can
hear Anu's
definitely,
thoughts as well on that. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, can definitely add more. No, look, I mean, again, right? This is it. I'll just pick on what you said, right? With so many things going on, this is the thing. This is not another good to do, right?
Mm,
The minute people and leaders understand that this is part of, very much that business value, right? And this is part of doing business. This is
mhm,
part of having, I mean, this is all of the sayings in the world, right? Where the strategy terms, it's everything that is out there will tell you that there's a clear ROI in terms of having a diverse and inclusive workspace, right? And the minute the top leaders understand that, this is about then having deliberate actions in each one of their goals, right? And yes, it is top down. Leaders inspire. There is no two ways about it. But if the top rungs of the leaders, right, understand that, and we're very fortunate to that extent, like I said, whether it's a CEO or a CHR or our India leader, if I talk about Srini Krish, he's so, and his entire leadership team is just so, it's second nature to them. So I think it comes from that, and then it percolates down, right? And like I said, it's that is the shift. It goes back to the mindset and knowing that this is not just another good to do, but fundamentally you want, okay, look, you want diverse ideas, right? You want to have innovations pretty much, I'm sure, on every other company's agenda, right?
yeah,
And to have innovation and innovative ideas, you need diverse thoughts. You need, for diverse thoughts, you need diversity in your workplace. Everybody can't look like a clone. So, you can backtrack from that. And I'm sure that there are numbers that will speak to, the achievement of the strategic goals itself. And then it all becomes commercial sense as well, besides the nice to do. And I'm sure Anu can speak more to it.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, Anu, love to hear your thoughts on this.
So, I would echo, I think, what Mamta has spoken about innovation and the whole agenda around diversity. I'm actually going to explain it through three experiences that I've had with a couple of our clients at WiT.
Mhm,
So, I would say, first of all, we have groups. I would group leaders and companies into three groups. So, one would be group one, which, would echo with what Mamta is saying. See the not just, committed, but they actually see a commercial connect. And for a long time diversity has been a good to do things, or because हमें compliance करना है या board ने बोला है या
mm,
publicly nobody wants to make a statement that
right.
we shouldn't do this because it's the right thing to do. But I think very few leaders really understand how it connects to the P&L. And to me, that's the big gap in the market.
Mhm,
Because in times of COVID, where everybody's fighting for survival and money is in short supply, you are running to hire talent to keep the machinery running, especially for the tech companies where we were. There tends to be who's the best at times, and sometimes there are more men in sectors like technology than women. So guess what, the probability of a woman being hired is lower. And it connects back to how organizations are pushing it, and their understanding of having the diverse thoughts leads to innovation, as Mamta has said. So it certainly does. But if you're not able to see the connect at a leadership level, I suspect at times it remains a lip service. So I'll give you an example. Like I work with a client who, they make some, let's say, sauces and
mhm,
mayonnaise or whatever. The
mhm,
client shall remain unnamed. So when we were talking to them, we were holding jars and we were actually addressing the leadership team why D&I could be a better agenda. So I said, I don't know about other women, but I can tell you about myself that वो अचार का bottle or jam ka bottle, when there's a glass bottle with a tin ढक्कन, I
mhm,
always run to the man of the house and saying, "Ye please खोल दो," because it's so tightly packed. I mean, it's good thing you packed it, but as a woman who probably spends a little more time than the man of the house in the kitchen, can't open it. So who are you making this for? Who is your end consumer, right? So simple stuff, but can be innovative if you just change the cap. Let's take another example. We talked about pregnant women, right? Outside office. So I've had two kids And often I would drive, and when have you ever asked a 8-month-old pregnant woman how it is to drive and wear a seatbelt? It's tough. So at least for me, I would tie it from the back so that I can be more comfortable. What is happening? I have defaulted the safety feature anyways. Okay, but I need to drive, so I will drive. So when we're talking to an auto company, we're talking about these examples. Now the problem with these is that both men and women think this is the normal. It's not only the men, even
Hmm.
the women don't challenge enough, and this is how the world is supposed to be. So that's okay, and it's not okay till somebody brings about that spoken. So funnily enough, I got a call from a CEO a few months back, and this was a financial services company, and he said, you know what, I just have a all male leadership team,
Mhm.
and yeah, we'd like to bring in diversity because now the board thinks that we should follow this agenda for all the good reasons. But it's really tough, yeah, with these guys. They will not say anything, but basically business is growing by 25%, so I can't even give them the gyan about commercial connect and how it will
Hmm.
bring about innovation and add to your PNL. So he said, Anu, we need to break into these guys because I don't know how to handle it, so we go in for this. And literally there were these 10 or 12 people sitting around the table, and they were looking at like, what a waste of 1.5 hour session. Okay. And I usually start with how's the business doing and what's going on. And then we talked about it was an insurance company. So we talked about insurance, and I said, okay, well, how many men and women pay the premium? So, one guy said, well, 95% are men. Now that's understandable because in India, well, across the world, men are older than the women. So they are ahead in their career journey. And by virtue of being ahead, they earn more. And so because they earn more, they'll end up paying the premium, which I'm usually okay with. I believe in my money is my money, his money is my money too. But but so I said, okay, what about single women? And we went into data analytics of why aren't more women taking insurance and underwriting the premium. So most of them, they said housewives, and they're not the earning members, and so forth, so on. So I said, is there any product just specifically for women? And they said everything: medical insurance, house insurance, household goods, life, non-life, everything is for women. And they're absolutely right. Right. So here is a situation where business is doing extremely well. All products are unisex. Men and women can pay for it, yet we find no men. um, so what is the debate? And I said, well, in our organization at WiT-ACE, sometimes we largely deal with professional women, but we've had some unfortunate ones coming to us and saying, I'm having a stress in my marital relationship, and or I'm getting abused. And most of the women stay in a bad relationship in spite of all odds because of money,
Mhm.
because they don't know how
Yeah.
to financially take care of themselves, their kids, their lifestyle. So I said, is there an insurance you can have for marriage? And they were like, a prenup. I said, no, no, not like a prenup, but how about giving her 2 crores if it doesn't work out, and she will find the money to pay your
Yeah.
premium. Because what's your downside? If she doesn't pay the premium, the policy doesn't vest. So suddenly I had some attention. कि अच्छा चलो अब थोड़ा business का बात हो रहा है. And I got the attention, and I didn't get the buy-in. So the next question I was grilled on was, Anu, there'll be a fraud. In India, people will divorce each other and then they will live together for this 1 crore or 2 crores over the next couple of years, and then doesn't work. So I said two things. One is you can vest it differently. First year give zero if you fear there is a risk. Second year give 10%, then give 25. Now for 7 8 years they stay together after a divorce, maybe they deserve to keep that money. The other thing is insurance industry runs on probability. What is
True.
the probability of these cases happening? Less than 1%, right? But there are those 99% women who will actually benefit, and you will give them wings to fly, and not stay in a relationship which is abusive just because she doesn't know how to deal with her finances. That's how we broke into the client. So going back to leadership, I think a lot of time it's not just simply good to do, which happens across the industry and not just in India, it happens across the globe. Because as I was saying, there are three buckets. One is who get it, second is who's confused but has the intent, policy, processes, and third is like, why the hell do I have to do this? I have to do it because my board says I have to do it, or there is ESG compliance. So the good thing is, the way I see it is, there's an opportunity. Whether it's pull or push, everybody's doing it. The question is, how do you strengthen the connect? So I think leader has an extensive role to play. Going back to the insurance company example, had the CEO not called me and brought me in front of, this lot, um, it would have never broken into. So there was somebody who believed into it, who cracked into it, and then there'll be people like us who will support people. So the initial buy-in is important. The other thing I find, that having worked with multiple CXOs, is, and this is just my own research, so there is no other sanctity to it, but most men or women who come from backgrounds where they have seen, could needn't be their mother, but they have come from backgrounds where they've seen, women working at home, and I'm just right now focusing on gender and not other form of DNI, tend to be much more empathetic to these situations. So look, Suman, I can go on and on about
Yeah.
it.
No, thank you so much. That was
I'm
very
just to
insightful.
substantiate Mamta's point, which was very well articulated.
No, very insightful. I love the insurance example. I hope that product hits the market soon. You know, no,
And Suman,
I retain the IP on it, huh?
I'm sure.
so sorry, Suman, I was just, if I may just take
Sure.
a minute, So look, I mean, just in not that we're going back and forth, but all of these are great examples and thoughts. So I'll also say this, right, in the corporate world, and there are real. So because Anu touched on pay, and that's just such a passionate point. And any day, any given day of the year, you wake any one of us up, right? We're going to stand and say it loud and clear. And I speak again not only for myself, but for the leaders. And I'm now talking about the male leaders, and maybe we're just blessed to have like good male leaders around us, right? But we really, really believe in this pay parity, right? So we've conducted pay parity analysis, and right from the minute we're attracting somebody, and I bring this back just because, to those of you who are tuned in and listening and looking for cues, look at it right from the minute you're looking at hiring the person, right? And I'll tell you, even when you're hiring the person, sometimes one thinks, okay, if I'm going to give this person also 30% and bring them in, and that male also 30% and bring them in, then I'm offering both the same percentage, right? How does it matter? And that woman will accept it at 30. But I'll tell you what, you probably need to give that woman 40% just to kind of, have them a level playing field. Now,
Yeah.
you can stand there and say that, their past experiences are their own. I haven't taken the responsibility of, making all their past life good. Or you can say it doesn't matter, a percentage is a notional number. For me, I want to have everybody who brings in a certain skill set, a certain set of experience at a common level playing field in the organization, and it starts from there. And if each one of us did our
Brilliant.
part, I feel like the world would be, genuinely a far better place to be in, right? So, I mean, and a far more equal place to be in. And then moving along, it's in everything. It's in every annual compensation cycle. It's in every, promotion cycle, or whatever may have you, right? Internal mobility, career opportunities, and goes back to it, right? Whenever we are looking at it and doing it, we don't do this once a year, feel good analysis. It's all the time. And that's the deliberation part about what I was mentioning, and the leadership part about it, right? So it starts to percolate down. So just thought that I'll add that in, as we're like literally living that as we speak.
Awesome. I know, and I agree with you. And I think we definitely got to do a lot more in most of these areas as professionals. But thank you so much, Mamta and Anu. We're running out of time. I'd love to chat with you guys. I'd love to continue chatting with you guys, but we've got to end this session now. But pleasure talking to you, and I hope everyone listening in, is able to take cues. And if this is helpful, feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. However, you can connect with us. I'd be happy to chat with all of you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mamta. Thanks, Anu.